Welcome to Smiles Television Talk Show. This is the Circle of Thought. We're going to have a great broadcast for you today. We're going to be talking with James Ingram, who's a columnist for the St. Louis American newspaper. And we have a wonderful gentleman here who has a wealth of knowledge and experience, Mr. Percy Dace. He sits on many boards, and we're going to talk a little bit about his background when we come back. You know what? Jesus Christ was born of a virgin. He was crucified and buried, and he rose on the third day. Confess that he is Lord. Believe it in your heart. And stay tuned for more smiles. And while we're taking a break, I'm going to be reading my Monitor newspaper. The Monitor newspaper has been in business since 1963 in East St. Louis, Illinois. And we thank the Monitor for all that they do. Welcome back to the Circle of Thought. Seated to my immediate right is Mr. Percy Dace, who has a wealth of experience and his background in economic development and strengthening communities. Also, we have, once again, James Ingram, columnist for the St. Louis American newspaper. James Ingram, Mr. Dace, thank you for coming back to the Circle of Thought. And you know, James had a funny statement. He said, well, Steph, it's more like a crescent of thought. Right, that's okay, right. It is what it is. And we're gonna get going real quickly. Mr. Dace, I just gave a brief intro to who you are. Why don't you tell our audience, let them know some of the things that you do.
Thank you, Stephanie. In addition to being Vice President of Community Economic Development at the Neighborhood House in East St. Louis, I serve as a member of the Illinois Asset Building Group, group that is charged with increasing the assets of people in the state, and particularly African Americans. I'm also vice chair of the Illinois African American Family Commission, and I've served as vice chair of the Illinois Partners for Human Service. All of these organizations are in place to strengthen the economy of people in the state of Illinois and to improve communities.
Wow, we're sitting here with a lot of experience. And James also, now you've been here before, but remind our audience of some of the things that you do. And you know what, at the near the end of the broadcast, James has a special treat for us. He's going to give us some information on the Rams. Go ahead, James.
Well, as you know, I'm a writer for St. Louis American, been doing so for about 12 years now. And one other thing that I do is I've been covering the Rams for about 12 years as well. So I've been kind of dabbling, looking at the ups and downs of the Rams. Been mainly down in the last 12 years, but I've been doing that as well, and and enjoy doing this show as well.
And you know what, James? Some of your articles are real hard hitting, and you don't.
Some people need to be hit hard.
Okay, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things. So let's get going because we don't have a whole lot of time. Mr. Dace, some of your interest has really been within the Black community.
Yes.
And you have an interest in talking about the wealth gap among African Americans.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
Actually, I started working in the East St. Louis area at 16 when I was a senior in high school.
Okay, so you're from East St. Louis.
I'm from the East St. Louis area.
Okay.
I've lived in East St. Louis, but I spent the majority of my childhood in Centerville, Illinois. Transplanted from St. Louis, moved to the east side when I was 7 years old. Okay. Like a number of us, I've witnessed the economic trials of African Americans all my life. Had a great interest in trying to improve our neighborhoods. I had some very strong mentors as I was growing up, and they were primarily men who were very interested in improving not only their households, their individual households, but they had a broader interest in improving the community. So I took that interest, and all my career I've actually worked at one level or the other with African Americans in African American communities, focusing on attempting to improve ourselves from a leadership standpoint, and particularly with youth leadership, and to help pull partnerships together so that we have more control of what happens in our community economically.
Speaking of leadership and things of that nature, James, what would you attribute the gap, the wealth gap, to among African Americans and others?
I would attribute the wealth gap to the same thing that has been attributed to historically, based upon our presence in this country, and it's racism. Recently, and it's interesting that we're talking about this subject, there was a report that was covered in the Post-Dispatch recently, and it was something done by East West Gateway, and it was, I think the title of the report was Where We Stand. And it dealt with all of the economic disparities in the African American community in the St. Louis region. And their conclusion was that St. Louis was, I believe, the sixth region in the country in terms of economic disparities for between blacks and whites. And every possible indicator that you can name, that they named in that article and in that particular report, blacks lagged in. Employment, education, infant mortality, having the capacity to own a home. I think it implied or it indicated that blacks in the St. Louis region spend 30% of their salary on average to own a home. They tend to be 30%, I believe in terms of unemployment, the unemployment rate is way higher. Whites tends to be like 5 times lower. It's ridiculous. And when you look at how blacks and how whites are living, and you look back in 1967, 68, when the Kerner Commission report was published, where it said that we got 2 nations, one black, one white, separate and unequal. So we're doing all of these studies, and we're doing all these surveys. We got this issue in Ferguson. We got all this stuff going on. And you fast forward from 67 to 2014, and black folks are still catching hell in America. So in many respects, though we have blacks in public office, we have blacks in high places who are in corporate America, who or have degrees, by and large, they're still catching hell in America. They're living almost like a third world country within the most prosperous nation in America, in the world, I'm sorry.
You know what, there's definitely a gap with the wealth. But there's a gap in a lot of areas, and this is a stretch here. But I'm going to say that if you look at our black families, and you look at the structure of the home, what goes on and what does not go on in the home. For example, just recently there's been a lot of controversy of whether or not to spank. I know I'm taking a jump here. Whether or not to spank your children, because what was the gentleman's name who?
Adrian Peterson.
Peterson. Peterson got in trouble because he spanked his child. Now, it did appear with that incident that the child had abrasions that were open cuts and things of that nature. So that could have possibly been child abuse. But let's switch gears a little bit and talk about spanking in the homes. When I was a kid, we got spankings. And it helped deter me from going into certain areas. It served to put me on the right path. Do we spank or don't we? What are your thoughts? I know I'm taking a jump here, but I just want to ask that question.
With your permission, may I just dovetail on what James said?
Okay.
And then I will talk about the spanking issue.
Okay.
But the modern civil rights campaign in the state started in 1945. I'm personally 85 years removed from slavery.
You said 85?
Yep.
Really?
85 years.
Okay.
No,
Wasn't that long ago?
It wasn't
Right,
that
long ago.
You're not dating yourself.
So when we look at our situation
Right.
as African Americans, a professor, Julius Wilson, University of Chicago, did some significant research on this subject of African Americans and how the financial bottom dropped out of our community, even in the early 60s rather. And then when the economics dropped out, our family structure started happening in the 60s. Now this is documented research done by Professor Wilson. Prior to that time, of course, we had segregation. We did not have the intrusion of people in our households as African Americans. Like a number of people, my family had a strong family background. My mother was a disciplinarian. She probably would have caught a case, particularly trying to discipline me because I was the youngest of three brothers, but I was the most challenging of the three. So sometimes she had to discipline me 3 or 4 times a day. So when we look at where we're at economically and how the control of our economics, because of segregation, we had to drive economics in our community.
James?
Well, let me just one couple points. And I appreciate all that research that Mr. Wilson did, the Kerner report, all that other stuff. What we need to do is start digging some of this old research out of the trash can and just revisiting it instead of doing more new research, because the conclusions are the same. Right. We're catching hell, we're underemployed, undereducated, and in general, we're not living the quality of life that we should. In terms of whether we should spank, I got a couple of concerns about Adrian Peterson. For people who are looking at this who don't know who Adrian Peterson is, you've been hidden under a rock for the last month or so. Adrian Peterson is a outstanding running back, and he's the premier running back in the NFL, and he plays for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Adrian Peterson has some problems on a lot of levels. First of all, he's got 7 children by 5 different women. So that's child abuse in and of itself right there, to have all of these children, and it's questionable as to whether or not he's actually taking care of them. I'm assuming you saw the photos, or you saw the photos of this child.
I saw the photos.
You saw the photos.
Right.
He spanked. It's a difference between a spanking, which I received, and a beat down. This child had lacerations on his genitals, as well as on his thighs and his buttocks.
I didn't know that other part.
So in what a 4-year-old child, what amount of wrong could a 4-year-old child get into that he deserved to be beat down like that is unfathomable to me. Now, I know we come from a tradition where you were made to go get a switch and bring it back to inflict punishment upon yourself. I get all of that. I know we did it, but also we learned a lot of the punishment that we received, the things that we received in terms of how we were brutalized by our parents, and these switchings and these things from the slave master. They beat us down, and there are books that I can refer you to, Slavery by John Lowell Dumman, books of this nature that describe in detail torturous tactics that were used to punish the slave. And we in turn, being under that system, took that same savagery and we imposed it on our children. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't, spank a child on the bottom and do these sorts of things and keep them in check. I think it worked for me, but the beat down with the ironing cords and and this sort of thing, I think it's a bit much. And I think when you know better, you do better. And our ancestors ate all types of scrap food that the slave master left behind. That doesn't mean we need to do the same thing now. And the same thing should extend to how we punish our children, how we deal with our children, and how we discipline them.
You know what? Abuse across the board. And I know it seems recently with the sports industry, there's been a lot of abuse that's been highlighted. And we know that goes on. It's not just in the sports industry. You have the Rice case where he hit the woman, knocked her out, and things of that nature. And I really wanted to talk about that case, but it's leading me to talk about abuse across the board. Abuse from police officers, abuse of authority in the churches, just abuse, period. What do you think that stems from? Does it go back to slavery? And I don't want to just say it's an African American problem, because it's not. Right. This is a problem. We're talking about white officers. We're talking about African Americans in sports or whatever. Right. Abuse, period, of authority.
Well,
where does that stem from?
Well, I think James hit upon it, and I don't know about the whole issue of abuse and where it stems from. But what I would say is, too often people don't hold each other accountable. Accountability, because even in the Ray Rice situation, it's my understanding from published reports that the Baltimore Ravens knew about the severity of the situation, but the same thing with police departments. Too often certain policemen are not being held accountable. So from my perspective, it's the issue of whomever has responsibility to hold people accountable, to make certain that they're treated just like you, James, myself, and average persons are treated. Those people need to be held more accountable who have the responsibility to control this country.
Let's go local.
And I was going to say, just quickly on that. This is across the board. It's Joe Sixpack beating on his wife when he comes home. It's the first responders, the police, firemen, and it's this hero worship of these professional athletes. I've covered athletics for years. And while they may be prolific on the field in terms of what they do there, many of them are scumbags when it comes to their conduct in their personal lives, with their women, with their children, in their homes. And what was most appalling to me about this Ray Rice business was when I saw some ignorant women wearing a Ray Rice jersey at the game immediately following this incident and defending this man. And we got these little mealy-mouthed reporters. I would have asked that one woman that I saw them interviewing with the Ray Rice jersey on, and she was a white woman, how would you have felt if he had knocked your daughter out in that elevator? How would you have felt about that? Would you be wearing this jersey to the game and talking about bring Ray Rice back? This is, when it gets to the point where women will discard their humanity for hero worship of a professional athlete, that's when it gets really bad.
Right, and not just women, men do the same
Sure.
thing as white. Let's take this thing local. We have the incident in St. Louis, of course, the Michael Brown incident with the abuse that the murder, the death that he ended up succumbing to. And then on the east side, in our own hometown, we have a police officer who just recently,
Right.
he resigned
Yes.
as a result of some allegations. James?
Well, first of all, it's unfortunate. Whatever they showed to Assistant Chief Ron Ike, this is who we're referring to, in terms of what their independent investigation revealed, caused him to resign. Now, that doesn't mean that he isn't going to lawyer up and go back and defend himself, and I'm sure to an extent he's trying to preserve his pension. He's been on that department about 19 years, from what I understand. So I understand the specifics and the economics of all of that, but it really speaks to a culture in which the allegation is that a young woman who was a summer worker was propositioned by him, and he made some alleged comments to that young woman, and she reported him, which she should have if that was the case. It just really speaks to a culture in which a lot of this stuff has been condoned, and if in fact Ron Ike did this, he isn't the first one to do it.
Right.
I work for City Hall. I've heard stories over the years of this being commonplace, and it's not to be condoned. I certainly don't, and I know no one here does either.
Right, Mr. Days, the impact that has, and like he said, we don't know if he's actually guilty, but just the impact, the knowledge of that. What impact does that have on the community and the mindset?
Yeah. Well, and I'm like James. I'm familiar with a lot of instances like that, and not only the police departments, but a lot of various agencies. When people are dealing with people who are in positions and they feel that these people are untouchable, it really deteriorates the value of that community. And when people see people in high office not being held accountable, that trickles down. We want to deal with the crime issue in the African American community. We want to hold other people accountable, but public officials, elected officials, appointed officials, they're not being held accountable. So I think it helps to create the chaos that may exist in some of our communities. So
We're coming down to the point where we're getting ready to start talking about our Rams.
Right.
But prior to talking about that, let's look at something national and national level with ISIS. You have in Oklahoma, where a young man tried to, but he did actually behead a woman, and he injured someone else. And he stated, according to reports, that he was doing this on behalf of his beliefs and his religion. Thoughts?
There's nothing in Islam that says that a person should behead someone in the name of Islam. That is propaganda. It is a continued narrative in the media to assail people who happen to be of the Muslim faith. The Muslim faith, just as in the Jewish religion, just in the Christian religion, teaches you to respect people as you would want to be respected. and to treat people as brothers and sisters. And it's a religion of peace, just like the others are. This is propaganda. This is some nut job that beheaded this woman, and it is a very convenient narrative to attribute it to terrorism.
Mr. Dace, any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, and one of the challenges, and it could be a nut job, because I really don't know the background of the gentleman, but what concerns me most of all, it's been reported that we have about 100 people who are going from overseas to our country who actually are sympathizers, ISIS sympathizers with passports. And so this whole issue of ISIS and the attack on Islam, it's just something that our Defense Department, our elected officials who have responsibility to secure our country, I do hope that we just have a better plan of securing our border.
You know what, you bring up some really good points, and I think just like both of you have said, it's a nutcase. And even in Christianity, we have people who claim to be Christian, who do crazy things, and it doesn't mean that they're actually Christian, but they are claiming to be.
Right.
We're going to have to get ready for a break, and I want to thank both of you
Thank you.
for being in the circle, in the crescent of thought, which will be a complete circle. I want to get ready for the Rams, and I want you to stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Kids will spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes twice a day. They have the time.
Abandoned and lost. From the dark, cold streets of the city to a cage in the local shelter, to heaven, your lap.
Up, college is hard. Down, those books are heavy.
My sport is football, but my passion is education.
Right up here.
So every year I take promising high schoolers on a college tour
Lights there, darks there.
to show them that higher education means a brighter future. My name is Nnamdi Asamoah. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
You can be a reader, tutor, or mentor too. Take the pledge at liveunited.org/volunteer.
Do you wear this?
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Experience St. Louis.
Thanks to James Ingram, we got a special show for you right now, in addition to our broadcast. James, thanks again for wanting to share with us about the Rams. Tell us what's going on with the Rams.
Well, I don't know if we should go. I guess we should go from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Okay.
Or ridiculous to the sublime. But not so good for the Rams. After they're going into the bye week as we're recording this, and they have a 1-2 record. Last contest was against the Dallas Cowboys. Rams blew a 21-0 lead and ended up losing by 3 points. Had a major breakdown, major collapse on the defensive side of the ball. And it's unexplainable. The good news is that the third string quarterback, we lost Sam Bradford and Sean Hill. Also, the second string quarterback was injured. Austin Davis did very good. He had over 300 yards that he threw for in the game. The running backs did very well in terms of moving the chains. So it was a good game until we got to the fourth quarter, and then there was a complete breakdown in the defense. And ironically, the defense is what the Rams touted as being their strength for this upcoming season, and they've yet to show up after 3 games. And the bad part is that it's not going to get any better. They have, after the bye week, they're going to go up into Philadelphia, which is a very good team. It doesn't look good there. And then 7 of the next 8 games that they play are against playoff caliber teams. So it doesn't look like it's going to get much better.
Well, you know what? I think the Rams still need Kurt Warner. He was my favorite player, of course, because he has such great Christian values. But what's going on with Kurt? I understand some things.
It'd be good if we could resurrect Kurt and bring him back. But now that you mentioned Kurt Warner, finally, after about 5 years of efforts to bring him to the area, we're going to have Kurt Warner inducted into the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame. I think they've been trying to get his schedule to work with what the other inductions that they've had in the past. But this year, on the 15th anniversary of the Rams winning the Super Bowl, he's going to be inducted. And I can't say enough about Kurt Warner. I've met him on a couple of occasions. He's a quality person. As you appreciate that he's a Christian individual. He does great work in the community still with homes and coat drives and that sort of thing. And I would hope that the Rams kind of take a cue from the St. Louis Sports Hall of Fame and retire his number. I think it's shameful that you have someone wearing his number when he contributed to their Super Bowl victory the same way that Marshall Faulk and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce did. So.
Okay, anything else that we can look forward to coming up with the Rams that we need to keep our eyes open for?
Well, let's hope and pray that somebody else has a football breakdown so that the Rams can sneak it in. The first 3 games should have been games that they won, and it's not looking very promising right now. But for those who are Rams fans, you always hold hope eternal. So.
Okay, James, and thank you. And will you do this with Smiles quite frequently?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
absolutely.
I want to thank you for tuning into Smiles Television Talk Show. Tune in every Monday at 11:30 a.m. on Charter Cable Channel 191 and at 8 o'clock p.m. on Charter Cable Channel 984. And remember, only what you do for Christ will last. You can contact me, Stephanie Miles, at 618-741-3770 if you're interested in being a guest on Smiles Television Talk Show. Or go to our website, www.smilestv.com. Our email address is smilesconsulting777@gmail.com. Keep smiling. You look better when you smile.